Well, hello there. I didn't see you come in. Make yourself at home. Have a drink. While I give some attention to some underappreciated characters and storylines that I personally love. And I hope you grow to love as well. Hey there, everybody, and welcome back. Today we are reading Swamp Thing number 107. And just a little recap on what's been going on in the last couple issues. The war between the gray and the green has begun. Swamp Thing has left Abby and his daughter Tefe in the grove of the Parliament of Trees to protect them while he goes to look for the missing elementals of the green that the green has captured but not yet taken over. So he's trying to find out where they've been kept, and eventually he does find out that they are in the Himalayas, or at least there's 3 of them that are. So he goes to the Himalayas and he finds a man named Otara who lives in a cave. And this man, I guess it's an elemental. He was a man at one time. He was a Neanderthal. He's the last of his race, and he has become a elemental of the green. But there is a spot on him that is part of the gray. And he has worked out a deal with the gray where he will watch over this prison that they've made for these 3, and he won't try to attempt to free them. And if he does that, he's left alone in this cave with this tree that he likes a lot. So that is why Swamp Thing has come here. He's come to free the captured elementals inside this cave. So when he gets there, he talks to Otara because Otara doesn't seem threatening or anything. And Otara seems like a pretty upstanding guy. He's mostly part of the green. And he even gives Swamp Thing some hints of how to defeat the gray and possibly how to free these elementals. And while this is going on, the gray isn't sleeping. They're trying to raise an army themselves. Matango, who's the head of the gray, discovers the treachery of Otara and that he told Swamp Thing how to free the elementals that are imprisoned. So Matango sends warriors to the cave. They begin to fight with Swamp Thing, and it seemed like they completely killed Otara, and now they have Swamp Thing captured. And that is where we left off with the last one. So first things first, with issue 107, we got the cover here. It is a deep dark blue, and it looks like Swamp Thing is being attacked by a bunch of different types of fish. But the fish have one thing in common. They're not different colors or anything. They're all white. So it seems like these fish have been taken over by the fungi. And we get the subtitle for this issue, which says The Quest for the Elementals number 4. And we also see it's written by Doug Wheeler with art by Mike Hoffman. And we start off on the first page, and it's kind of like it's starting just before the last page of the last issue. Otara is still alive, but he's captured. And Swamp Thing has just tried to get into the prison, but his arm is rotting off. And the same scene occurs again where the bad guy puts his finger in the spot on Otara's back where the fungus was. But instead of like dissolving and exploding like he did at the end of the last issue, this time we see like his body about to explode, and then all of a sudden he is in another realm. And it's not just him, it's basically he's traveling with the other gray elementals, and Swamp Thing is also there because he has been captured too. So while they're traveling, the gray elementals make a stop. I believe it's in the cave that like Matango gets his power from, and they leave Otara there, and he gets kind of like wrapped up in the roots of Matango. And as Swamp Thing watches this, Otara tells him, "Holland Creator, worry not of me, for I have long meditated and prepared for this moment. One needs find the spot which cannot be moved, and I now stand upon that spot. You cannot move me from it." But Swamp Thing doesn't have time to say anything back to him because Otara gets sucked down, and as he does, Matango kind of answers him and says, "You delude yourself. Your race is now extinct, except for the Green's latest child, and soon she too will be mine." And then we cut to the grove in the Parliament of Trees where Abby is walking around with Tefe and knocking on all these different trees, trying to get a response from them because no one can talk to her. She can't understand them even if they do. But there's been a couple that have talked to her, like Olsen, who's Alex Olsen from the first appearance of Swamp Thing in House of Secrets 92. And obviously the German one, I don't remember his name, but Hollander, I think his name is. He's the one who brought her and Tefe back once the mercenaries were all killed by Tefe. But none of them are manifesting now, and none of them are talking to her. And she's even seeing a lot of these trees turn grayish or like a different color than they were before. And that's because a lot of them have left these bodies to go fight the gray elsewhere, and they have either been captured or have been turned to the gray. So as Abby's kind of talking to herself, saying that no one's been able to talk to her, she thinks for a second and goes, well, maybe they have been answering and I just can't understand their speech. The only time I could was when I ate that fruit. And she looks down and she just happens to see some fruit that looks like the same stuff that allowed her to go into the green with Tefe and Swamp Thing a couple issues ago. So not knowing what else to do, she just decides to eat it. And she is instantly transported into the green along with Tefe in her arms. And that's way faster than normal. Usually it takes a while, a couple minutes, I'm assuming, for the psychedelics to take effect when you take a bite of one of those things. Because she was planning to drop Tefe off on the shore before the psychedelics took effect. So she was actually saying like, oh, don't worry, Tefe, I'll bring you to the shore before the seed begins to, and then she's transported and it says, to take effect, where are we? And then all of a sudden a voice says, in Turu's arms, atop a single twig of Tefe's nest of visions. To her this appears as a solid bowl, for she sees all branches, all paths possible at once. And she asks who's talking, and she thinks it's Turu, but it ends up being that it's Ysigdrael. And when she hears it's him, she asks Ysigdrael, where's Alec? And Ysigdrael says, most of those who went out 3 days ago have failed to return. The gray was prepared for our assault. We no longer sense him within the green. He must have been absorbed by Matango. Tefe is now the green's sole reigning protector. And Abby asks, you're going to try to rescue him then, right? And Ysigdrael replies, those most capable of facing Matango have been lost in our attempts to free those taken captive in the first war. We are too weakened to attempt such a rescue and have become even more vulnerable here. And Abby, of course, having heard that Swamp Thing's been dead a couple different times in her life and relationship with him, she's like, no, I don't believe it. Alec can't be gone. I've heard all this before. And then Ysigdrael tries to comfort her, saying, Abigail, each of us within the Founder's Grove shared in Alec Holland's memories at birth, and are all, in a sense, him. Each of us is Alec Holland, as he would have become had he lived through the experiences which we have. You are not without Alec as long as you are here with us. And that is not what Abby wanted to hear. She is kind of upset, and she says, no, you're not Alec. You can't replace him. Just bring Alec back. And then we cut to a dark area. There's pitch black around. There's a little tiny sliver of light. We can see a little bit of fishes swimming around, and they're the kind of fish that have the really big eyes and the sharp teeth that look like they live super, super deep in the ocean. And out of nowhere, a voice speaks and says, so, Holland, your will is stronger than Matango's, and you have finally awakened with us. And then we see Swamp Thing, and he's on a wall, I guess, in another cave or something like that. But there's like heads of other animals next to him. So there's like a stag, and then there's like a saber-toothed tiger looking thing. And the stag is the one talking right now, and it says, I am heart in the trees, and beside you is fields that stalk. We are your fellow prisoners. And Swamp Thing asks, where are we? And Heart in the Trees answers, far beneath the waters of the Pacific, in a trench hewed by a fragment of the asteroid that brought the gray to the earth. Matango holds us here as captives, his thoughts constantly stabbing our minds, waiting until our wills are weakened and no challenge to his before absorbing us into the gray. Those still asleep to our world are in greatest risk, their entire consciousness engaged in maintaining their identity. So besides just Swamp Thing and this deer and the saber-toothed tiger, there's a couple other like animal spirits, I guess they are. And there's like an ape looking thing and a boar and an alligator. And basically these all represent different elemental constructs, and their wills are too strong for Matango to conquer right away. So he puts them in this trench in the bottom of the ocean, basically just talking to them a bunch, trying to get them to come over to his side and give themselves up to him. So there are ones that are awake, like the stag and the saber-toothed tiger, but the other ones, the boar and the alligator and the monkey, are so fixed on trying to not be taken over by Matango that they're not even awake technically. They're just only focused on stopping Matango from taking them over. And any break in their concentration would mean that Matango is going to take them over. And Swamp Thing asks, what about us? Those of us awake. What has kept us here? What guards our escape? And the saber-toothed tiger proceeds to answer Swamp Thing and tells him that In this trench, because there's basically just asteroid fragments surrounding them, the green is cut off, except a tiny part, which is what the ones who are sleeping and even the ones that are awake are using to fight Matango off in their minds. It's kind of like their last connection, and if that was cut off, then they would be completely taken over. And the saber-toothed tiger says,
if any of us were to let go of their share of the green in order to strengthen another, they would instantly fall to the gray, increasing Matango's power to stop the one attempting to escape. The balance of life energies here is patterned against us no matter our plan.
And then Swamp Thing asks,
the green is still present here. Why not leave through it? And if it is guarded, then why not inflate our bodies and float to the ocean's surface? These fungal cages seem not very sturdy.
And the stag answers him,
the green about us is heavily guarded by elementals now absorbed into the gray. This coral fungus surrounding us and the eels in it are not meant to keep us in, but rather to keep the fish out. Our bodies are all made of the same type of kelp, one edible to the fish just outside. If we tried to swim or float, the fish would rip our bodies apart in seconds, dropping our spirits into the gray, where Matango would absorb them permanently. And then Swamp Thing seems to start getting it, and he understands, and he says, and because our sense of the green has been limited to yards, there are no other forms of plant life nearby that we can access.
And the stag says,
correct, a perfect prison. Some have been held here for millennia, since their capture during the Great Migration. None have ever escaped.
And then Swamp Thing asks,
fields that stalk, how many of us are imprisoned here?
And the saber-tooth answers,
hundreds, perhaps more than 1,000, I do not know. Most of us are recent arrivals. Matango somehow anticipated our attempts to rescue those held from the First War and had traps waiting for us.
And upon hearing this, Swamp Thing thinks something might be going on with Ysigdrael, and he says,
I was told before my capture that Ysigdrael's fungusized half is part of Matango's body. Could Ysigdrael have told Matango of what we had planned without the Parliament knowing?
And the saber-tooth responds,
no, Ysigdrael has always been our leader and shared his thoughts, though some members have wondered why he keeps referring to Matango as a worm stirring beneath his roots.
And then we cut to Matango's Chamber of Dreams. And this is what he calls that place that's just kind of like the realm that Matango hangs out in. Usually there's like the high priest walking around here. But right now we're not seeing the high priest. We're only seeing other acolytes and Otara. And Matango is talking to Otara saying,
it is time, Otara, for you to join me here. To be consumed by the gray, my body integrated into the roots of my chamber of dreams. Come to us, my new instrument, bite by bite, piece by piece.
And as he says this, the acolytes that are in the room begin to munch away on Otara. And Matango continues,
join your cousins as they surrender their wills and their spirits to me. Watch now to your right, one of your cousins is submitting, yielding to the numbing ecstasy of a total immersion in the group mind which is me, accepting and now seeing the wondrous spectrum of the gray, purging and shedding his inner disease, the bland stifling nightmare of the green. His moltings will be carried to the vault of discarded selves.
And underneath this talking, the panels we're seeing are Otara in terror as he's being kind of eaten alive, and then he's looking at a tree that a Swamp Thing-like body manifests out of, and then it looks green kind of, but it's more amorphous. There's no features on it, so the face is just kind of like you can see where the eyes and nose and mouth would be, but there's no definition of them. And then some roots come out and grab each side of the arms of this body, and they pull and they split it in half, but the body is just a shell or like a skin that is being pulled off and molted kind of, and what's inside of it is the being that was an elemental before that had green skin. Now that green skin is ripped off and now it has gray skin and there's fungus all over its face. So this is like a new warrior that Matango has birthed from one of the past elementals that he's overtaken. So Matango continues,
watch my pet rise now to my kingdom yet to come. to my will soon be done, on an earth remade as per my heaven. Your dream is dead, Otara. Come and join mine. I'll let you sit by my side as we watch it fulfilled together. The fall of the Parliament is finally at hand.
And it's interesting because the panel that they use where they show that this new warrior that Matango has made has left the Chamber of Dreams and has gone up with some other warriors to attack the Parliament of the Trees is the panel, I think, from a couple issues ago or maybe last issue where like we saw that Matango was ready to attack. So this is kind of like a flashback to what happened before the moment that last issue ended. So these warriors of Matango are about to attack the Parliament of Trees. And we cut back to Abby and Tefe, who are still inside the Parliament of Trees in that grove. And we see like what's going on in reality, which is just Abby standing in water holding a baby, staring upwards. But she's having a full psychedelic trip. And she's about had it now, talking to Ysigdrael. She asks him, I asked you, how do we get out of this place? And Ysigdrael says, it's Tefe's nest, her place of power. She can see all paths and knows the best route to follow. And Abby says, don't play games with me, Ysigdrael. I'm sure you know the way out too. And I don't care to wait until Tefe figures it out. I came here to ask you where Alec was and to ask you to rescue him. I've done that and now I want out. And then we cut to some more warriors of Matango that are now swimming towards the green. And we see Matango say, we know the Parliament's weak spot. Go, my fingers, and strangle them. Occupy their hollow trunks. And what Matango is saying here is he's telling all of his fungi to invade the Parliament of Trees. And because all of the Parliament members have kind of gone on the offensive and left their tree bodies and gone into the green, they're left defenseless. So these spores begin to grow up and these fungi begin to take over the tree bodies that are empty and just grow a bunch of fungal spores and mushrooms and stuff all over the grove. And then we cut back into the psychedelic realm of the green where Abby and Tefe are. And all of a sudden, like this darkness begins to creep into the world that was all bright and shiny before. And Abby asks, what is that down there? That dark area? Why are the butterflies flying away from it? And Ysigdrael says, it is a vision of the gray. This is, after all, Tefe's nest of visions. And Abby asks, but why is it getting closer? Why does it feel like it's right here with us? And Ysigdrael replies, because the event being foretold is almost upon us, because the Grey is now attacking the Parliament and is approaching our grove. And then Abby says once again, let us out of here. And Ysigdrael says, it's too dangerous for you in the Founder's Grove now. It is about to be attacked. You are safer here with us, where we can protect your spirit. Abandon your physical body. And then we cut to the actual grove where Abby and Tefe's body are, and they're just standing in the middle of this pool in the middle of the grove. And Ysigdrael is talking to Am, and he's saying, the Grey are using our empty receptacles to manifest themselves in the grove. They are destroying the Garden of Bereavement. All the knowledge stored there, all the memories are gone. And Am looks at Abby and says, are they all right? Matango's forces will head towards here. Abigail and Tefe must be moved, but we cannot contact them. Where are they? And then Am looks down in the water and sees one of Turu's seeds that Abby had eaten to get into the green before. And he picks it up and he examines it and he says, wait, the seed's interior, it has been infested with fungus. And we see a seed pod that has been ripped apart and it is full of gray fungus. And then we cut back to Abby, who's still talking to who she thinks is Ysigdrael. And she says, abandon my body? I can't do that. And evil Ysigdrael says, you are already spiritually separated from your flesh. You need only let go of the ethereal link back. And then Abby says to him, even if I could, I wouldn't want to. I'm not like one of you. I'm comfortable with the body I've grown up with. And then evil Ysigdrael says, that body died 2 months ago. What difference should it make to you now? We cannot protect your physical body from attack. Release it. Tefe can make you another one once it's safe. Until then, we will protect you here. And then Abby, who's kind of catching on that this isn't feeling right, says, you said we. When I did this with Alec, I felt the entire Parliament present with us. I thought you were a group mind. Where are the rest of you? And then we cut away from Abby and go back to the trench in the ocean where Swamp Thing and the stag and the Sabretooth are being held. And kind of out of nowhere, the Sabretooth yells out, "Red kelp, pass the word down your line. That piece of red kelp is descending from the ocean surface." And Swamp Thing, he's new here. He doesn't quite understand what's going on. So he asks,
"What is so important about this?"
And the stag answers him that the fish that are guarding the outside of this trench do not eat red kelp because it's poisonous to them. So as these pieces of kelp fall from the ocean surface down to this trench area, these captured elementals are all like hoping with bated breath that the red kelp will kind of fall down to where they can reach it, because they can only kind of feel out within a certain amount of yards. So the kelp has to fall directly where it needs to for them to be able to feel it. And then they will be able to grow their bodies from it and escape. And Swamp Thing asks them,
"Has this ever happened before?"
And the Sabretooth answers him,
"According to those imprisoned here, since the Great Migration, it has occurred almost a dozen times, but the currents have never brought the kelp close enough to touch. We must be ready if it comes near."
And then there's like a full page following the path of this little piece of red kelp because it's so important to them. And they're just watching. I just imagine like as it's following in each panel, going wherever the water's pushing it. And of course, like usual, this one gets pushed away from them just enough so that none of them can reach it. But Swamp Thing, being a new guy here, he doesn't have the defeatist attitude of these other elementals. And he says,
"We could swim out to it. It's our only chance."
And the stag says,
"That has been attempted before and has always failed. The fish destroyed those trying, and they were absorbed into the gray."
And Swamp Thing says,
"Matango has begun his war against the green, and nearly a fourth of the parliament is trapped here. We are needed back in the green now. This is our only chance."
And like I said before, we're looking at just like heads on a wall. So it's kind of like they're mounted there like trophies. So we got Swamp Thing's head in between the Sabretooth and the stag head. And Swamp Thing's head just kind of pulls itself off the wall. It's not really a body trailing behind him, just kelp tentacles, I guess they are. And he just takes off and starts swimming. And the last panel of this issue, we see Swamp Thing making a break for it. His head is swimming with the kelp trailing behind him. And we see all these fish begin to swarm around him. And the stag says,
"The fish have encircled him. He will never make it."
And that is the end of the issue. That's where it leaves off. So next time we will see what happens to Swamp Thing and if he makes it to the red kelp or not. And also what's going on with Abby. Is she trapped in the gray with evil Ysigdrasil? So if you guys have any comments, questions, or suggestions, you can email me at planestrains.comicbooks, all one word, at gmail.com. And remember to stay swampy.